Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video tour. Today we're going to be having a little look at the new spreadsheet processing facilities in Personal Edition 3.1.2. This is an extension of the capability of pulling data from Excel into project reports, and really what we've done is we've extended the amount of information that we can bring from Excel to help with the setup of that process. So the approach we've had previously about using our calculational instructions, if you like, to determine how data is going to be combined together at the portfolio level and processing that information, whether it's going to be added or appended or multiplied, concatenated, etc., still remains exactly the same as it did previously. But now we have this extra layer of bringing information through from the Excel sheet styles and formats and the like. So I can show you through a couple of examples of that, and also show you how the form for managing all that has changed a little bit. So if we come to our project summary information and into our spreadsheets area, you'll see this form now extends a little bit further than it had done previously in a couple of particular aspects. The first is the table here, which allows us not only to define the spreadsheet source and then the source of the data, i.e. the worksheet and cell range, or a named range, but we can also now give it a description instead. So the description, if there is one given, will be what's used as the heading in the report section. So rather than it coming up and saying spreadsheet, example spreadsheet XLSX, portfolio data range, it'll instead give the title we've asked it to do, which in this case says both reports, but could be something a little nicer like operations cash flow over 10 years. So just allows the presentation of that to be a little bit nicer, and then when we're doing portfolio reporting, it will look for firstly the same titles in data ranges set in multiple spreadsheets. So previously we would automatically look for that from the method template, and if it wasn't in the method template, it would still bring it when the spreadsheets and named and data ranges were exactly the same. Now it'll look to match that on titles as well. So titles is the first port of call. So that's a change there, and also you'll notice that there's an additional column here for image, and it's possible to bring images back from the spreadsheets and include those in the reports as well. And we won't look at that just yet. We'll concentrate on the data side first, and I'll come back and have a look at that at the end. So thinking about the data side now, it's basically exactly the same as it was previously, and in fact anything that you've in terms of setting it up. So anything that you've set up in the past will work again, but will now bring through more information than it did previously. So we've got a very simple example here. We've got a spreadsheet, a worksheet and a cell range, just a couple of cells being brought back. And we can have a little look at the example we're dealing with here. So what I've got is a couple of little examples, just two cells here in the spreadsheet. They use a range of typical sort of things that people might set up in Excel. We've got a sort of header row here with a date in it, and we've got some numbers in a row here. There's some colouring being used. There's some borders on these cells here. We can see there's a top and a right hand border showing on the number there, and all we're doing is grabbing that data, bringing it back and processing. But now rather than just bringing the numbers back, we also bring back as much of the style and format here as we can. So I haven't forced any particular formats on here. You'll see I've just typed in a date and Excel's picked it up and worked out it's some sort of date, but I've not forced that. And same with the number, it's just got the general format applied to it still. Now what happens when we bring that out, we can actually have a look at that in the steps, the same as we could previously, is we can see the raw data that we bring back, and we can see we've just got those two cells there, but now when we click on them we can see all the information we're actually bringing back from Excel. So the first thing we've got is the original Excel number format. This is the one that Excel determined it was going to be, which is DMMMYY. It's got the Excel borders that it's picked out, and we've then got the display styles that we're going to apply to this cell, which is a standard conversion that we have saved. If it can bring it through and use it exactly verbatim into the HTML type formats, then it will do. If not, there's a sort of lookup list, and we'll come back and have a look at that in just a moment. So we can see this is the style we're then going to apply here. We're going to pick up the colours, etc., and apply those across to our output. And we've converted that background colour picked up out of Excel into our background colour that we're going to use in the output report. Same sort of thing with a number here. We've picked up that it's a number, it's got some borders and it's got some colours, and we're going to pick that up and apply that across. So how that outworks into what would be actually produced into the report, we can see here in view formatted data. And we can see this is, if you like, the sort of mini report section. So we can preview our work while we're setting the reporting up, and we can see that's broadly what it's brought through, although we can see that actually the date format's a little odd here. So it looks like there isn't a direct lookup to convert the date format that was used in Excel into one that can be used in HTML. So we can actually go and deal with that ourselves now. So what we can do here in options is we can choose to add an extra sort of definition of date or number. So what we've got here is a lot of typical sorts of formats for both numbers and in this case for dates that we find coming through from Excel. We've looked up a lot of these and we've given them conversions that actually can be used in the HTML type report data structure instead. So Excel will often put in slightly odd things here, like use the finance or date format for a particular country, or some slightly odd arrangements, and we may not want, although that's the way it's applied in Excel, we may not want it to look like that in our output report. So we can deal with that by setting up our own lookup here. So the way we can do that is I can come back into here, I can open my data table, and I can pick the date format that Excel has given me here, and I can copy that from here. So let's grab that, copy it out of there, and I can now come and put it in my lookups list here. So here's my date formats. I'm going to add a new one I want the system to process, and I'm going to edit the from and put in the format I've just collected, and I want that to now display as edit to. I want that to show me as a day, month, year, for example. Okay, so now we've set that up, we've added to the list of standard conversions that it will do. We can come back here and have a look at our formatted data, and so we can see that the output is as we expected it to be now with our new date, month, year format. And so that will now be used for any data that comes in with that particular format to start off with, will now be converted to this new output format. So let's have a look a little bit further along. What we've got next is something where in our little example sheet in Excel we have now forced Excel format. So I've now forced an Excel format on that date, and I've also forced a number format on here with some currency and comma separators, etc. And again, we can see how that's processed. Let's just go straight and have a look at the output of that. And we can see this is now picking up that Excel date format that was specified, and it's picking up that number currency type format as well and processing those through. So we can actually set an awful lot of this stuff in Excel first of all and then bring that out. But the thing we just looked at where we changed the date format is useful for when there's a particularly odd format of data brought in. Somebody's given you a spreadsheet, they want you to process it out, and there's some slightly odd setups, perhaps when things have been sent internationally, etc. Now let's have a look at this third example there, because what we need to then think about is what actually gets brought through from Excel. So the colours and formats here are stored by Excel in the cells. The common thing people like to do with Excel spreadsheets, especially sort of output tables, reporting, etc., is do some sort of conditional formatting. So for example, turn the cell red if the value isn't over 40,000, something like that. Now that conditional formatting that you'd normally do in Excel up here can't be brought out of Excel into our reporting, because Excel stores it as a rule which it reapplies. It's not actually stored as a piece of data against the cell, or a piece of information against the cell. Now what we can then do is we can choose to use our own little attributes on top of that. So what I've got here is a sort of conversion of the basic data to a data format that's usable by our reporting. So again, I've got the same normal data arrangement, and in the number arrangement here I've applied a little bit of logic. I've just put into the cell, if this value is greater than 40,000, then just use the value normally. If it isn't, concatenate, which is an Excel thing which joins two bits together. Concatenate the number and whatever's in cell E63. And E63 here is a stored definition of what I want to apply as a format change. So if the values are greater than 40,000, less than 40,000, sorry, I want to apply these things. And I've got two standard settings: attribute background color equals red, attribute color, which is the font color, equals white. So if it's above 40,000, it'll stay as it should be, blue and black. If it's less than 40,000, it will go red and white. Now that's something you can build into your Excel relatively easily, and so what you might have is a table you show in Excel and then a separate table that's processed for going into the reporting. And we can see how that then comes out into the processing here. So here I'm going to view my formatted data for that last one, and we can see it's brought that out red and white, and it's still retained the other things. So it's retained the original number format from Excel, it's retained the borders, etc. It's only changed the elements that we forced on it, and so we have this progression of format. If something comes from Excel, we take that first. If something's forced from Project in a Box using one of these attribute codes, then that overrides whatever's in Excel. And now you can change, though, and we have a range of default settings for handling all that. That can be changed if you want it to be. So for example, when we're portfolio reporting, if we're adding these numbers together, we've often got two tables from different projects. They've got this sort of conditional formatting set up on them. Well, when we do a portfolio and we merge numbers together, we ignore any of these background color type codes, format color codes that we're looking to apply, because they're often different on different cells and you wouldn't know which one to use at the portfolio level. So in the portfolio version of that, it would just bring out the normal Excel background color. So that's our three little progressive examples. Now we can have a little look at how some of that all comes together. So here's an example of a sort of a cash flow type calculation that's being done in a typical spreadsheet, and we can see how that looks. And you see here, this is a more typical example. This isn't using any Project in a Box codes at all. This is just bringing it straight across from Excel and presenting it out into the report. You can see we've got a nicer header, and we've got all of our there's a col span going on here. There's a merged title cell that's been handled appropriately, and we've got our various colours and data formats and number formats, etc., coming through just naturally straight into the output report. So that's quite good in that you can take as much as you want, and then if you do want to do these extra things using our codes to do essentially conditional formatting, then you can do that on top. But the idea is that you can now bring the vast majority of it out from the Excel route. Now, of course, if you want to do the same sort of things we did before, the adding together of data, processing of data, etc., then you'll still need to insert the standard sort of Project in a Box codes for that. So let's just go and have a quick look at one of those, where we put in our portfolio include type rules, project include type rules. So here we're saying we want to include this data range in both portfolio reports and project reports. But when we include it in a portfolio report, we don't want to use any style rules. A bit like what I was just saying earlier. Don't bother bringing the style across for portfolio reporting. And we've given an instruction here to add the data that's in these rows. So here we can see we've got, for example, exactly the sort of condition we've just been talking about earlier. We're looking at some sort of data range. Here's the raw natural data using conditional formatting in Excel, and here's the one we've prepared here for going into reporting, which instead forces across, in this case, some date formats, and forces some conditional colour positions onto this as well when appropriate. Now, in fact, I think this one uses two different ones. It uses some orange and some red, depending on the distance away from the target value that the number was. So that we can see how that's going to come across. And this one's using, in fact, a named range format here, so we can see the data block that we're dealing with, and how that gets brought out. So let's have a little look at that. So if we formatted data, we can see here, so it's brought across those date formats. It's coloured some of them up in orange in this case, and some in red, depending on where they are and what those different rules were. So that's, if you like, a sort of more real-world example of our little step-by-step example we looked at earlier, applying our sort of project-in-a-box type conditional format. And then the last thing we wanted to have a look at was bringing through our images. So we've got a really nice little neat way of handling bringing out charts into your report. And what we do is we bring charts from a spreadsheet, from a worksheet in a spreadsheet, and it's done by using the image of that. So if I view that source spreadsheet file, what we'll see here is on this worksheet we've got a whole load of the calculations that we're dealing with, and we can see we've got all the various bits of data that we were pulling into our report. So this is the thing that we just saw a minute ago. This is how it looks in Excel. We've seen how it looks in our output report. And we've got a chart that's running from here in normal Excel chart sort of mode. It's just picking up that data and putting it into a chart. Now, again, a chart is sort of really stored normally in Excel as a series of essentially rules and instructions. So it's not possible to pick up the chart itself. But what we can do, which works very well, is to pick up any images stored in the spreadsheet. And so the way we've done that here is we've created a copy of the chart as an image. And the way to do that is very simple. You select the chart, right click to copy it, and then you can simply paste it as an image. And pasting it as an image like this, it's then that image that we pick up. And that means, of course, that you can adjust the scale and size of it so it fits in your report as you might want it to. Every time, obviously, you make some changes to the data, you must remember, therefore, to copy your chart over to an output image. And if you're doing this from a whole collection of worksheets, as often is the case, a big spreadsheet may have many different worksheets of calculations. You can have then perhaps one worksheet where you just copy and paste all your charts that you want to use, and they'll be brought across into the report. And we can see how that works as well. So let's close all that down. What I'm going to do now is run a project report and bring through all these bits. So the other thing is that you can set up a load of things like this on your project, and that of course could be done from the method template, and then you can choose to switch them on and off. So we could perhaps have various bits on and off. So let's look down here and say, well, actually we're not really interested in this. It's portfolio only. We are not really interested in our early two little examples. We'll just have the one where it goes red. So we've selected the bits that we're interested in our report. And now when we come and run our project report, we're going to obviously have switched on using user specified spreadsheet tables. And therefore what we get out is exactly that. We've got a number of different data blocks here out of our cash flow. We've got our chart that's come back out of that area as well. We've got our bigger one here. Our coloured example we looked at in our tiny little step-by-step example as well. So quite a simple way actually of bringing an awful lot of detail, and people in the past with our reporting have spent a lot of time forcing all these colour formats and borders, etc., on using our own little attribute set, whereas now you can bring the vast majority of that straight from Excel, saving you a whole lot of time and effort. And it's really here where you can look to add some value with our attribute stuff around the sort of fake conditional formatting. And of course you can now bring in the charts as well, obviously via a sort of slight bypass, but that means you can put any other sorts of images you want to in your spreadsheet, of course. You're not just forced to bring an Excel type chart, but you can merge together an image you're interested in with some screenshots and various other things as well, if you would like to do that. Okay, so that's a very quick look through this, not by any means expected to be exhaustive. If you have any further questions, please contact us on our support number, and we'd be glad to help you further with this area, which we think is very exciting and is something we are currently in the process of adding to our multi-user platforms as well. Okay, thanks very much.